1, 2, 3, 4, 5
on the floor.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Full Court Press. Today we are joined by Alex Toledo, first-time visitor Greg Sylvander, Mr. Hope Trafficking himself, and, of course, Ariel Atias and myself, Daniel Cartagena. No Marco Romo today. He got called into work, but he'll be back very, very shortly. We'll have
this doesn't work.
But we got some heat to talk about. We haven't talked about heat in a little bit. I think it's been 2 weeks. And there's been a ton of noise on Twitter. I guess Heat Twitter is just coming up with stuff to talk about now that it's the offseason. But there's a lot. I mean, you got Damian Lillard potentially requesting a trade. You got some noise with Brandon Ingram, maybe some noise with Colin Sexton. Any other names that I'm missing? Or are those kind of like the main three that have come up recently? In trades, at least.
Yeah. I mean, there's avenues for a million different guys, but I think that's probably it. I think the Kawhi pipe dream also made the news cycle with Stephen A. Smith's comments. So, like, that's probably out there to some capacity, but you kind of nailed it. That's the list for now.
Yeah, if only Kawhi could actually come true. But how are we doing tonight, fellas, before we get into this Heat stuff? How are we doing?
Good, chilling.
Good. Yeah.
Great, man.
Happy to be here.
Like you said, it's been a heck of a news cycle the last few days as it pertains to the Heat and what they might be doing this offseason. So let's get into it.
I'm at peace within the noise, just knowing that they're active.
Yeah, that's one of the takeaways that I've had too. Like hearing these rumors and hearing that they're interested in every single player in the NBA makes me feel a little bit better. Lonzo Ball, we'll maybe touch on Lonzo Ball later. Dame is actually where I want to start because, I mean, Greg, Alex, you guys released the podcast talking about the Dame situation and whether you try to give up everything you can or if you have to give up Bam, do you give up Bam? So the pros with Dame, obviously, great basketball player. He's incredible. He's an offensive superstar. But does Dame and Jimmy, is that sort of avenue to team building, allocating $75 million to them next season, is that something that you think between those two alone can create the Heat into a championship contender?
I think so. I do. But it is like a question. I think it's a good question because like if you don't fill out the rest of the roster in limited way, I know that there's going to be some money freed up if you were to do that. If they were to put all cards on the table other than Jimmy, there would be some freed up avenues for them to kind of fill up the roster. But you really got to like nail those guys, right? You got to get the help that you need to surround those two. Because I do think between Dame and Jimmy, those are two guys who bring it every year and bring it in the playoffs every year, other than this year for Jimmy. I mean, he was completely gassed out, not even trying to make excuses for him. But I just believe in the both of them as real playoff guys who step up their game as shot creators, as fourth quarter players, and just bring all their best stuff comes out during the playoffs. So I believe it's a two that can win. But, you know, I would just do everything in my power, and I know the Heat will too, to, you know, keep Bam off the table until the last second. There's no way I believe that they want to trade Bam already. And maybe Pat would do it, but I bet you they're going to do whatever they can to make sure that they don't get to that point.
Yeah, I've kind of mentally moved on from the Dame stuff because I don't think Miami's going to be able to necessarily pull up enough draft picks. And if you're talking about the blue chip young player or whatever player is coming with that package, I just feel like Philly, New York, Boston, they all have these young ascending players that right now may look more attractive than Tyler Hero. A year ago, that wasn't the case. Damn it. But you never, these circumstances present themselves and you have what you have. So to me, like I've already moved on mentally from the Dame stuff and I'm looking at team building from the perspective of, and I like that you guys named this episode, at least how I had initially saw it was like, what is the best avenue? Like what is the best route to building out this roster? And as much as I'd love the Dame stuff, there's a lot of fun marketability to that, and it would be highlight reels and all of that stuff. I love the idea of it. I don't think it's realistic.
I may or may not have 2K on right now with Dame Lillard on the Heat. Just,
I'm sure
How does he look in the uni?
I mean, it looks incredible. I gotta say, after playing a couple quarters with Dame on the Heat, it's a perfect fit. I say go all in.
I'm totally with Greg here in that, like, I don't think unless the Heat go nuclear, they opt for the nuclear option and put Bam Adebayo on the table, you can't get in the game. You just it doesn't matter if you get OKC to unprotect the pick. It doesn't matter if you reacquire a 23 first. Like, the most you can do is put 3, maybe 4 first round picks in any kind of trade for Dame Lillard. But I'll tell you, that Portland front office doesn't care about a 2027 first round pick, first of all. A lot of those guys' jobs are on the line, right? So that stuff doesn't hold a ton of value to them. They're looking, if they're blowing things up and trading Dame, they need blue chip prospects and they need immediate draft capital. I just don't think there's a package that the Heat have access to, in order to get a guy like Dame. I think the only way they can do that is putting Bam Adebayo on the table. I don't think they will. Whether they should is another discussion. I personally would do it. I've been attacked on Twitter for this, but I would do it, man. Like, Damian Lillard is a top 10 player in the NBA. He has some of the most clutch moments, in playoff settings in the last, decade or so. And people love to bring up how he's never gotten to the finals. He's never done this. He's never done that. We need to stop with these narratives. They're nonsense. Narratives are narratives until they aren't anymore. The second best player on any of his teams has been CJ McCollum, right? And he's running up the Kevin Durant, Steph Curry Warriors and teams like that. Like, he's just not going to win in those settings. So Jimmy Butler would be the best teammate he's ever had. Eric Spoelstra would be the best coach he's ever had. The Heat would have a lot of avenues to, continue to fill out the roster this offseason if they put Bam on the table and got a deal done. So I get all the future concerns and all of that stuff. I don't agree with it. I understand it, but I would do it if I were the Heat.
I have a question.
Man, you kind of just sold me right there, because I've been on the opposite end of the spectrum. But damn, that was a compelling case you just made.
That was sharp. That was a sharp answer. I love that.
Dude, because my main thing is, like, the main argument against putting Bam on the table, and I think it's valid. I don't agree with it, but I think it's valid, is that, you're mortgaging the future and you're cashing in the chip and all of that. But it's like, why are we valuing the championship 4 years from now over the championship over the next couple of seasons? Now, the retort to that is always, well, you're not winning a championship with Dame and Jimmy. First of all, you don't know what the roster is going to look like, so you can't project that. It's impossible. Second of all, the Heat got to the finals last season with Bam and Jimmy as their 2 best players. All right.
Damian Lillard, playoffs are an example too that anything can happen.
Damian Lillard is a top 10 player in the NBA. He is that dude. He's that good. Like, I get the whole, well, the Nets are so good on paper and that you're not getting past them. Where are the Nets right now? Like, you never know what's going to happen in the playoffs. You get the best players possible. You roll the dice. That's how it goes in the NBA.
I have a question. So what if, and I know that Bam would, like I said, it would probably be the best chip available, but it's hard to imagine some of these teams putting out some of these guys, even though Dame is absolutely worth. But, like, let's say the Celtics, right? Are we assuming they're gonna throw Jaylen Brown onto the table? Because I know that's like an end all type of piece.
Danny Ainge is not in charge anymore. They very well might.
Like, the Sixers are a different story. They just have to blow it up. I mean, I'm hoping they don't. I'm hoping they don't trade Simmons. I'm ready for another year of this, but because I just absolutely do not want to see Dame Lillard on the Celtics or the Sixers, and I've said that before. But, like, let's say it's a scenario where these guys are not putting their best pieces onto the table. What happens then?
Portland doesn't move him. He's got 4 years on his deal.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't think it's a sort of scenario where Dame asks out and then there's nothing Portland can do in order to keep him. I think he's too loyal, where if they show that they're willing to give him what he wants, then he'll end up staying there, at least he'll give it one more go round, and then they'll have to blow it up. But I don't think Portland's just going to sell him to sell him.
Agreed. Like, Harden made it as difficult on a franchise as one could make it. I don't think, and they still got a good package. So I just think that ultimately they're not going to feel pressed in that circumstance. But, like, from Philadelphia's perspective, particularly, you listen to Neil O'Shea, who's been bombing every press conference all summer. Like, what? I mean, he hasn't had one good sentence, but
you saw what he said today, right?
Like, one of the reasons why they fired the head coach is defense. They didn't improve defensively, and he spouted out defensive numbers from the playoffs and from the regular season and how they never improved. I could see him selling his own vision. Like, you know what I mean? It's nice when you can pat yourself on the back and say that you're smart and saying like, this is a good defensive minded player that's going to reshape the way we play on that end. And then if they get, you know, Maxey and 3 or 4 picks and whatever else, like that starts to get where I think Miami's not going to be able to necessarily put a package unless they put Bam on the table.
But they didn't want to put Simmons and all that down for Harden. And I know things have changed, you know, like it's kind of been enforced that maybe the Simmons
things
thing
don't
is going to
change
work out.
like the Biggie track.
But it's almost like it's happened every single time that Embiid and Simmons have been healthy, with Tobias Harris, with Jimmy Butler, with Horford. You know, I know they weren't healthy last year. Simmons wasn't there, but it's just kind of like what happens every year. So I'm wondering if it's just like, where is this actually going to go, right? Is this just a lot of noise for now? Is this like them kind of pressuring the front office to make some sort of win now move that may or may not be available? Like, because it sounds like to me, from what we're talking about here, is the natural endpoint is the blue chip guy, and then not necessarily, you know, the Harden package, which was 4 pick swaps and something like that, where like Oladipo was kind of just the contract and it was more about everything else in the deal. So is that where you guys are with this? I'm kind of just like, I don't know.
I think, yeah, go ahead, Greg.
I'll just quickly say Portland can't build a team via free agency. So take that as you will. It's either going to be through the draft or through trade. So it's going to be a combination of win now guys and draft capital.
I was to negotiate with OKC in New Orleans, unlock some of those picks, send the picks to Portland, send Ingram to Portland, and then throw some heat stuff over there.
I could just boom. That's not out of the realm of possibility. I think New Orleans has like 11 movable first round picks right now. Like,
listen, all this stuff we're talking about, it's likely going to be 3 and 14 deals. Like it's going to be wild like that because they're going to have to get creative. That's how you're going to maximize every team's ability to like use their assets to their advantage and get involved and get in play. So I think it's going to be crazy stuff like that.
Okay, so let me get to Christian Carduce's dono here. It said, does Blazers Twitter even exist, or is it a fabrication by Pat Riley's social media team to give Dame backlash as an excuse to leave Portland? I think as of today, Blazers Twitter exists because I saw Neil O'Shea and their PR team getting absolutely flamed for that press conference today. So today is the day that Blazers Twitter might have been born. And listen, I'm cool with it. Deserving backlash.
They're out there. They've
definitely bombed everything. But Greg, to your point to start, Dame to Miami is very unlikely, so we won't keep or stay on that. But on the topic of this is one thing that Greg also touched on. Do you go for the whale or do you go for team building? Because there are some avenues to make the team around Jimmy and Bam to make this team really good. 1, you get Kyle Lowry. 2, maybe you trade for a young guy like Brandon Ingram or Colin Sexton. With Colin Sexton, it would probably be a little bit cheaper or a lot cheaper. So the cap constraints would be much, much easier in that sense. But do you think the Heat's best chance, because you're not going to out-talent Brooklyn, you're most likely not going to out-talent the Lakers in terms of top-tier talent. Do you go for the team that is 7 or 8 deep, and those 8 are all really, really good interchangeable players where you have chess pieces, kind of like the way that the Clippers are built right now? Do you go for that sort of thing? Or do you try to get that third star guy in the building to try to match what Brooklyn and all them have? I think that's the decision that Miami needs to make this offseason. I would love to get your guys' opinion on this.
It's the primary question. You framed it up perfectly. And it's interesting. I think that they're going to – so this is how I would approach. First, you scan the league. Can you get a big time guy that like fits that whale category that transcends all this roster building discussion? Like he just transcends that stuff. You canvass the league. Like you hear like these whispers that like Brooklyn would be open-minded to moving Kyrie. Like I know Kyrie and Jimmy are homies. Like, so you check in. It's probably going to be BS and you move on. Ultimately, I think you land in a place where this idea of team building with a more balanced group is probably the way to go. I think that this year, more than ever, you're seeing that anything can happen. So like you add Lowry. And to me, this is the key to this offseason that I want to see them be super aggressive. I feel like there's no reason that they can give that would say that they should be looking down the line. So as aggressive as possible. And it has to be a mix of guys that are win now, but also, and this is why I like this Colin Sexton idea, guys with upside, younger players that you can build around and start to maybe even they can become bigger assets or bigger parts of other deals, but just positive, good players so like that's
guys
what I'm looking
don't
for.
Depreciate.
Correct. Yes, you've said it much more succinctly than I did.
I couldn't agree more. I'm in the mode of just like, yes, if there's this type of Orca available who transcends, you go after him, and that's what the Heat are gonna do. We know that, like, if Dame is actually out there, if and when that happens, I'm sure they're gonna do everything they can to get past these obstacles that aren't necessarily obstacles. I know that's how they're thinking, like they said last night on 5 on the Floor. But really, it's just like I'm already looking in the mindset of just like, Lowry isn't a guarantee by any means, but I'm looking at it as like such a nice possibility that I'm looking at, okay, what are the ways that you can get Lowry and then plug up other holes, even if you're not getting another, really high level player like some of the guys we talked about, whether it's like an Ingram or McCollum, but not even those types of guys, just like filling out holes with lesser guys. I think that's a damn good team. And let's say, like, you look at it on paper, they're not as good as Brooklyn, but we just saw, even though Brooklyn was banged up, I think they would have beaten the Bucks if they were healthy. I think they're not necessarily unbeatable. And
Agreed.
let's say, like, they're probably going to do stuff this offseason as well. But I just think it's like you can't have that mindset. Like, what's even the point of being in the league, right? Like, this team was just in the finals last year. You think the front office, the top guys, Spo, like the guys who were there for all of that, are not thinking we can be right back there if we can plug up some of these holes. So that's what I think is going to end up happening. And I'm good with it, man. I think they can be competitive as hell, but just kind of the onus is on the front office and the onus is on the players because, everybody has a bad taste after what happened at the end of the season. I
think you guys are on the money. I agree very much with what you said, Greg, in that they've got to scour the trade market and look in every single crevice, every single hole. You try to get, your hands on the best player that's potentially available. But in looking at the free agent class, I just haven't seen a ton that gets me excited as it pertains to the Heat. There are, good rotational players available in free agency, but I just think it all lends itself to the Heat being much more likely to be operating over the cap, picking up the team options, and then seeing what you can attach trade assets to those contracts and what kind of big name players or high level rotational players at the very least that you can bring back. Because like I'm looking at the free agent list and like at the guards, I mean, outside of what, if you get Kyle Lowry, who are you looking at? Reggie Jackson,
Yeah.
TJ McConnell. I like both players, but I mean, you're giving them the full mid-level exception to get them to even consider your team in free agency, probably. So that puts you in a place where you're looking at veteran minimums, biannual exception, things like that. And it's just the tier of player that you're looking at decreases. So I think it's more likely, and I tweeted this earlier, that they try to address like the guard market, the guard rotation in the trade market more so. And then you scour the free agent market with your mid-level exception, your biannual exception, and a bunch of minimums open, and you're giving those to the wings and the bigs, because I think there is a good core of wing and big players on the market, but as far as the guards go, it's not very good.
Harrison Barnes?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're totally onto something there. I think that they're going to operate above the cap. There's no doubt about that. So you talk about the mid-level exception. There's not a lot of guys that I would say, like, I feel comfortable giving multiple years at that full mid-level that's out there. Like even TJ McConnell, as good as he plays, like, are we really giving him the full mid-level for 3 years? Like, that doesn't sound like a good investment. I don't know. Maybe I could be talked into it if Jimmy really loves it, but how much of this we're going to do it because Jimmy loves it stuff are we going to really do? So like, to me, I would think that they would actually look to split the mid-level between a couple guys and try to bring back maybe somebody who was on the roster like Dwayne Dedman, or they take Andre Drummond and another guy because there's been reported interest there, although I don't like that at all. We go on record as saying that.
We do meditation whenever that name gets
right.
For the Heat.
But so I think they'll split the mid-level. Where this gets dicey, back to what you said earlier about the trade market, is like, if you don't address the front court partner next to Bam, the scoring deficiencies, and the point guard problem all via trade, I don't think there's a player good enough at the full mid-level to plug one of those three holes. And that's where the issue gets, particularly dicey.
It's a little bit too many holes for free agency.
Let me, if you guys don't mind, let me throw out a few free agent names to you that I think might be around the mid-level exception type money. So let's say around 8 to 9.5 million per year. You tell me who you feel comfortable giving that money to. Will Barton, Otto Porter Jr., Josh Richardson, Torrey Craig, Doug McDermott on the wings.
Will Barton.
I like 4 out of 5.
Okay.
With I don't remember who was the one I didn't like.
Oh
And,
my
like
God.
in theory, I would absolutely throw that money at Will Barton, and like Doug McDermott is like a guy I would like as a Duncan replacement, or even if you can get him like to split the mid level, make him. I'll have him come off the bench. Why not? We can take a little bit more shooting, but again, that's like something that you can do if you're also plugging other holes with trades or whatever, and with whoever you sign. So I just think like in theory, I would take some of these guys. I think Barton is a nice name. I like that name because you kind of get a little bit bigger in the backcourt too. I think he can play small ball 3 for a little bit. He attacks the basket. You know, he's not in the prime of his career, but he's still a pretty good player for a team trying to win.
So
Yeah.
let's go ahead, Greg. Yeah.
Let me just mention this.
Mhm.
In the event things do get really crazy this summer, and like let's just say Duncan and Hero are both gone, and like we are devoid of 3-point shooting. One, I want to say that Max Strus has a role on this team next year. There's a role for Max Strus, but I could see them prioritizing shooting to the degree that a Doug McDermott could get a mid-level contract. Like if they had the right mix of guys and they just needed that shooter that's going to create space. Anyway,
He like
let's move on.
75% Duncan Robinson, 80% maybe.
Yeah, kind of.
Somewhere
I mean,
there.
I'll take it. They
I
need
mean-
as much shooting as they can, especially if Duncan dips or Wayne Ellington maybe.
That's what I mean. Yep.
All right, real quick, let's do the same exercise with the bigs. I've got Paul Millsap, Serge Ibaka, Nerlens Noel, Daniel Tice, JaMychal Green, Bobby Portis.
No,
Ibaka,
yes,
Green.
yes, no, yes.
You said those names too fast.
I like JaMychal
Ibaka,
Green. Green and Portis, I probably would consider, but none of those names are making me say like, yes, that was like a move.
Ibaka, or
You guys
Green?
don't like Ibaka that much? I know
I
the
do.
injury concerns are a big thing.
The
but-
injury.
Ibaka
Yeah.
and Green, like if they evaluate that Ibaka will be back to decent shape as you know early in the season, mid-season, I still think it's worth it because at the end of the day, he's like a playoff type guy for you. Hopefully,
You don't think he'll opt in? Doesn't he have a player option?
I can
Is
double
it?
check real quick.
Yeah, that would be good information. I thought he would be
Because if it's a player option, I would imagine he would
he'll
protect
opt in for
himself
sure.
and take
Yeah.
that.
He got the MLE last year. He won't.
Correct.
he
That's
won't
what but I could be
opt out of
wrong.
that.
I think JaMychal will be cool too. Millsap, I think the you know. We
How about
set-
Markieff
we set sail
Morris?
on that.
Do you
Huh?
guys like Markieff Morris?
I'm
Not at the
depends,
mid level.
not the full MLE. Like if
What
you're
if
giving
you're
like a
splitting the
biannual or
mid-level
something.
with Markieff and Trevor Ariza? I'm making this up. Like I'm totally just spitballing.
Is Batum out there? Jeff Green?
I take Jeff Green.
Batum's out there, and I would absolutely take.
Either of those
For
guys.
sure, I would take Batum.
I think him, Jeff Green, Markieff. I kind of look at them all. Ariza, kind of in the same boat as like guys who are more or less on that same level, like fours that you would want to have, like just like in your rotation. I want Ariza back personally. I know he finished off the season ugly. I thought it just wasn't a great matchup. The whole team was out of sync, but I just think he's a good player. You know, so I'll take Ariza back cheap if he wants to. If he wants to come back on the cheap and. Like Markieff isn't a terrible idea, but you just got to do so much elsewhere where it's like you got to make sure you have everything else plugged up.
Yeah, he's got to be like your 10th guy. I don't think he's in the playoff rotation.
When I think of Markieff Morris, I think of how pissed I was during the bubble finals when Bam would not leave him because Markieff would just stay at the 3-point line. Bam was always guarding him, and I remember always bringing this up. Bam would not leave him.
Yeah.
You know, when LeBron would get to a drive or when AD get something going into the paint, and he would just leave. Like you got to stick to Markieff Morris.
Shout out to Adrian in the comments. Ibaka is a player option. He will exercise. He always has. Adrian has all the information.
Yeah, he's got the player option for 9.4 something million.
He's staying in Los Angeles.
Who are the Heat signing, Adrian?
Right.
Give us the information now, please. Ariel, any other names that you have?
As far as the guards go, I mentioned Dinwiddie, Reggie Jackson, TJ McConnell. Who did I skip out on? I mentioned Reggie Bullock. I don't know. Reggie Bullock, I feel like is a guy,
Schroeder?
sniper. I'm not in on Schroeder. I feel like he's going to command a little bit too much money. I think his idea of what he's worth is a little bit inflated probably. And no, I'm not in on Schroeder.
Yeah, for one, I'm out on Schroeder and Dinwiddie for the Miami Heat.
Hot take.
I like
think
Dinwiddie.
either of them fit.
Let's talk about Dinwiddie because, Gad, I think your opinion is probably the more popular one. I don't agree with it, but
Really?
a lot of people, yes, I find most of what
A
I've
lot of
seen,
people would like Dinwiddie on the Heat.
most of what I've seen is people are generally against the Dinwiddie thing. You've got the injury concerns and what the cost of acquisition is there.
That's a big that I understand that concern, but I guess if you get him at any level of a discount and
Exactly,
he
yeah.
plays at the level that he was playing before, and we've seen guys come back, like this is not like where that injury debilitates you and you're done. Like that, it just doesn't happen that way anymore most of the time. So if dude comes back and plays, like all of a sudden you got an asset playing way above their contract value. So I've always liked that idea of Dinwiddie, but I know the concerns.
I've seen his Instagram workouts, man. He looks good. No, but
That's what
seriously,
stars are
like,
made.
yeah, like if you can get him on a discount, like if you're not trading too much to get him, you're trading guys who you don't necessarily look at as guys you have to keep. Like I don't think it's a bad idea. You know, I wouldn't say, get Dinwiddie and don't go after Lowry. You know,
No. I'm not implying.
But
that.
even if, let's say the Lowry thing just doesn't work out, they don't get another guard. Even if they just come back with kind of the same rotation and Dinwiddie instead of none or something, I'd be like,
Hey,
it's not great.
I'll be
but
disappointed. I'll go on record as saying that.
It's just a clunky fit, and at the same time, like he's not someone that's going to make others better. I think he's going to be a six man in the sense that you need him to go get a bucket. If that's what you're bringing him in to do,
Exactly.
then sure, but you're going to have to pay him more than six man bucket money. I just don't see a way in Miami where he would overplay the value of his contract. I think if he goes to the Lakers or somewhere else, or like the Clippers, stays with the Nets, anywhere else, I think he can end up doing something like that. But with Miami, with Jimmy and Bam, I don't think he's a guy that's going to be closing for you reliably, and that's kind of where I want them to allocate money right now.
man,
My bad. I'm really interested because like we talk about like Sexton too as an example, and like posing the idea that like maybe I kind of think of Sexton and Dinwiddie as similar guys when it comes to, you don't want them as your best playmaker, you don't want them as your best scorer. They're certainly not your best defender, that's for sure. But I don't know, like I feel like on a team that has the infrastructure that the Heat do when it comes to Jimmy, Bam, and Spo, that you can make it work. But it's definitely not like one, first option, second option. I just think it's like, better than nothing. But it is tough because it's like, do you want to pay him more than the mid-level? I don't know. Do you want to give him 15, 16, 17 mil? I don't know.
He opted out of, I think, 13 mil this year, 12 or 13 mil. So he has to know that he's going to be getting in the teens. And that's just with all that context, I don't think I'd pay him. If it was the MLE,
Sure.
I mean,
what if he just wants the years?
he's not taking the years at the MLE, especially coming off an injury. It doesn't. But I think we're underrating Spencer Dinwiddie a little bit. I don't think he's like an all-star level player by any means, but in his last healthy season, what was that? Last year, I guess, I believe he averaged something like 20 points per game, 7 assists. The percentages aren't phenomenal with him. He's not the most efficient player, but I think playing next to Jimmy Bam and you get him some spacers, I think that changes things for him with a coach like Eric Spoelstra.
That's three non-shooters though. That's my problem. You have three non-shooters there.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's a non-shooter. I would say he's not a great shooter.
Have you looked at his numbers?
Mm-hmm.
His numbers
I just mentioned them.
He's very close to Jimmy Butler-esque in terms of shooting threes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, can he hit the mid-range?
It's
Sure.
weird because I've seen him be a good like pull-up shooter before, especially in the mid-range, like you just said. But it's funny because I don't like you think of him as a non-shooter, and I know Ariel said I'm kind of on that same boat, but you might be right. We could just be in denial. We were thinking of the old Dinwiddie.
Talk about non-shooters. What do you guys think of Marcus Smart?
I mean, him and Jimmy Butler playing defense together would just be crazy to watch, but that team would score 75 points a game. So
I love Marcus Smart for the Heat.
You got to get something, you got to help out your scoring elsewhere. And I know I feel like I keep saying that, but shit, man, the Heat cannot be too good for some of these guys, especially for a guy like Smart, who is so damn annoying. And like he's annoyingly good on defense, right? And I just think he would be a great ad.
I would love to watch Lowry and Smart play together with Jimmy and Bam. That would just be
now we are cooking,
man.
Yes, that would be first team all defense, just 5 Miami players right there.
Heavy duty.
Absolutely no one would want to play the Heat ever. They would be the most irritating team to go up against night in, night out. Marcus Smart, Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler.
Trade for Jay Crowder again.
Guts.
Could
I
you
do
keep
miss
Duncan
Jay.
or-
Watching Jay, even when he has bad games, I miss Jay.
Me too. I'm
I'm
by
glad
the
they
way,
didn't pay him, but still.
the Western Conference Finals, the battle of the two fours that the Heat wanted this summer between Crowder and Marcus Morris, who they were
True.
supposed to have, but really, like, do you think? I'm sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought. You guys, I was thinking about the Western Conference Finals thing. What were we just talking about?
I don't know, but let me just cut to these two donos real quick. We got Christian Cardus. Would y'all trade Spo for Dame? Fight. Sure.
If that's what it comes down to, I'd rather trade
Sure,
Spo
yeah.
than Bam. Oh man.
Oh my God.
The game's won on the court.
I want to
Man,
hear. I
this
want to
is
hear Greg's
really
answer
interesting.
before I respond.
How old is Dame?
30.
Going on 31 very soon.
No. I don't think I do.
I remember what I was going to say. Could you keep Duncan Robinson in a Marcus Smart scenario?
Probably, but you're probably looking at.
Oh boy,
Would you put Tyler Hero in that deal?
I would
But
put
you're-
Tyler
you're-
before Duncan.
Your 4 next to Bam is going to be like Markieff Morris.
Semi Ojale.
Oh God. That would be the most.
If it's Grant Williams, I'm a Magic fan.
So,
from
like,
now on. If
So how, Adebayo,
would
Markieff
love
Morris,
Grant Williams.
Duncan Robinson, Marcus Smart, Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler. That's your guys.
If Semi Ojale is the
Get your
starting
Michael Green.
four, if he's a starting four on the Heat next year with
Let's
Marcus
get Aaron
Smart,
Naismith.
hey, that'd be the most annoying team to play against. It'd also be the most annoying team for Heat fans too.
Imagine coaching that team being Spo. How do you
Small
drop
ball,
an
baby.
offense?
Jimmy gonna
Yeah.
be playing a whole lot of 4 all of a sudden.
Yeah, no, it's not realistic as I actually unpack the roster like
But
that.
really, can't you do that and then just it's kind of like budgeting, right? You can't get a great 4, but some of these guys that we talked about before,
right.
like
You have
Ariza,
to-
Markieff,
where are
would
you gonna
be
lean in?
satisfied? I like that team. I think that's what we're talking about when it comes to balancing out the roster. I like
Ooh.
that team.
Greg, question.
I mean, yes, in a vacuum I would, but also the way that Jimmy went in for this franchise, particularly like if you go back, and I would encourage Heat fans, particularly Heat fans like Ben, who's always here for every damn show, to go back and watch Jimmy's intro presser when he got here. Go back and watch that. Like just sit and watch. It ain't gonna take long. Go back and watch it. And it's just hard for me to say then trade Jimmy. Like that just feels like some heartless shit that's not going to work out well for us long term.
That's the Danny Ainge thing, right?
Yeah, man. I don't know. These are not.
karma?
This is not 2K, and these are not robots.
Thank
So,
you.
um,
Shout out to Adam.
Perception matters. Relationships around the league matters, right? Like if you move Jimmy after touting him as your guy and what he did for you in the finals last year,
Isaiah Thomas, right?
it's a bad look,
Yeah.
and it puts
Similar.
the Heat. It puts the Heat maybe right back where they were when they let Dwayne walk. That was
But they got Dame, Kawhi, and Bam, so I don't know. Fuck what everybody else thinks.
Trey Young out for Game 4.
he is.
No, I
Trae
would
Young
not want
out?
to trade Jimmy, man.
Can we talk for a second about how, and I don't want to take anything away from the Bucks. The reality is to get to the finals and especially to win a championship, you need a lot of things to break your way. But man, have they had a lot of things break their way.
Yep. And like
Hello.
break their way all the way back to those trades that didn't happen that they wish they would have happened, and now they're still gonna maybe get a path to the finals, and they're gonna pat themselves on the back as geniuses. But it's a lot of circumstantial luck kind of stuff. But that's what you need. 06 was like that for Miami.
Isn't
I'm
that
the
just kind
biggest
of
proponent of it, but that's how
That's
stuff
what just
plays
happened
out.
in Miami.
Hey man, that Pistons team that they went up against that they had lost to in Game 7 the year prior was better that year in 06. They were like a
Right.
64 win team. Like
Yep.
the
Right.
Heat had no business
Yep.
winning that series on paper.
Yeah.
Yep. And isn't that just kind of what happens every year in the NBA? Really, like it's kind of the best of the teams that were able to not only just stay healthy, but are just fit well together. It's like
Figure
a
it
lot of
out.
these teams end up
Absolutely.
not being separated by a lot, other than matchups and just kind of whatever happens to happen in the series. You get what I'm saying? Like some guys just tough it out and play through the injuries and execute better, and that's why like Chris Paul and the Suns are going to end up going to the finals, and I think they're going to beat the Bucks. But no, really, what I'm talking about is just like
It's made the playoffs
Bucks
fun
and
to
the Suns
watch.
Win the title, exactly. I completely agree. It's great for the league, but the Bucks or the Suns win the title, and you're gonna get all sorts of takes about Like I was doing a tongue-in-cheek thing the other day with my friends. It's going to be the third straight asterisk title.
Oh yeah,
And it's
Mike
just like-
Greenberg is totally gonna go for this. Is this bad for the league?
Oh, stop it.
Let's talk
I don't
about it
wanna
for
hear
6.5 hours.
I don't want to hear it. It's been great. Like obviously the injuries is the annoying stuff, right? But it's been at a higher rate than normal. But really, if you're really gonna say that this is the third straight asterisk title, doesn't that just mean that this is what happens every year? That the injuries just get ramped up, and it's about luck and execution and chemistry. I feel like in matchups. I don't know, like all that playoff shit that we talk about.
This is why I've been going to war with some of Heat Twitter over the last few days, and that every time something's thrown out, it's the response is met with, well, that team's not beating Brooklyn. That team's not going to the Listen, man, you put the best team possible together, you get them on the court, and you roll the bleeping dice. That is how you win championships, man. Like games aren't played on paper. Injuries happen. The chemistry sometimes isn't perfect. There's so many factors. I hate that retort. I hate it. Are you just not supposed to make the moves because on paper it doesn't make you the best team in the league? No, you make the moves and then you roll the dice. You put the best team together and you go for it. That's it.
You can tell we're all big Lowry guys.
Listen, for
100%.
years,
He's a good player.
Everybody on every radio show, even like Ethan and Whitty, which was a great show, they used to say like, but is that going to beat the Warriors? Is that going to beat the Warriors? And I understand where that question comes from. I'm not taking a shot at them. I understand the logic and the thinking behind it. But then all of a sudden we woke up one day and the damn Warriors, that shit was over with. So like you have to build to win now, and you never know when you break through. And like the Heat showed it in 2020. Like they could have broke through and gotten one right there. Like that stuff happens.
I will go to my grave saying that the Heat were winning that championship if they were healthy, man.
Agree.
0-5-2.
0-5-2.
That's your all-in move, PJ Tucker. I do want to get to one dono here again.
Is he a free agent?
Yeah, but I think, do they have bird rights on him in Milwaukee? He's going to stay in Milwaukee.
Really? I would throw him right into that category. Give me him over Markieff. Give me him over.
For sure. I'm just not giving up a first to get PJ Tucker.
No.
Anyways,
definitely not.
Corbs, thank you for the donation. Dinwiddie is the way to go if we lose Duncan or not get Kyle. I don't see Dinwiddie as a Duncan replacement.
No, he doesn't.
But I mean, he is a functional point guard, which is probably better than most of the guards that we had last year. So
Dinwiddie will be the future Dragic.
This is a good question, though, and we can go around quickly on it because I don't want to take the show too long. But we're having fun talking through this stuff. If they lost Duncan, who is the damn like they need a marksman shooter with Jimmy and Bam as the two building blocks? Who the hell is it?
Can I throw 3 names?
Yep.
Okay, so 1, we talked about him, Doug McDermott.
Yep.
2, Max Strus. You just have to have
Come on, no. I want some.
You don't want to rely
names,
on the sharpshooter. I think what you're doing is you're getting a collection of players who can actually create their own shot, and then you don't need to rely on a sharpshooter. Or 3,
JJ Redick.
I was gonna say Malik Monk actually.
Ooh, I like that.
Terrence Ross is he in the market?
Wow.
I think Malik Monk is like low key. If you think of players that have a little bit of upside, aren't going to be that expensive. I mean, he'll be really cheap.
Would you give him the mid-level? Is that what he's looking for? I don't know what he's looking for.
He's a restricted free agent. I think he's looking for anything he can get. But he shot 40% on 5 attempts a game from 3 this year.
I would take him easy.
Wayne Ellington Wayne Ellington with more upside. I'll take it.
Kentucky.
How do you guys feel about him on defense?
How do we play here on defense?
Who cares?
I was going to say.
Talking about shooting, Alex.
Hey, true. He can't create. I like the Malik Monk idea. Give me Malik and Wayne.
He has I was looking at the numbers earlier. I think it's 56, maybe 57% of his points are unassisted. So inside the arc, he's create his own shot guy, and then outside of the arc, obviously he's a catch and shoot player. Shot like 41% on catch and shoot this year.
How are you guys gonna feel when it's Dinwiddie and Tim Hardaway Jr. and no Lowry?
No, Tim Hardaway Jr. is just a seasoned Tyler Hero.
He wants to be in Miami.
Hey, hold on a second. I like it.
That?
I wouldn't be upset.
Yes. Listen to me. I'm telling you, he wants to be in Miami. It's just that I think the Heat have other priorities, and the market will move quicker than they can get back to him. But he would love to come to Miami
eventually. I'm not in on paying him what he wants though.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's the cost to acquire there, but just to throw out a couple of potential veteran minimum biannual exception type money guys to replace Duncan's shooting. Wayne Ellington, JJ Redick, those have to be the two guys. I think Tony Snell might be a free agent. He's not, the movement shooter for sure. But hey, man, he shot, if I remember correctly, he shot phenomenally, like absurdly well from three this year. So that's another guy.
Running dribble handoffs for Tony Snell.
At one point, like when we lost to them, I think that like Brandon Goodwin night where we lost to the Hawks G League team, Snell was shooting about 57% from three at that point in the season. I don't know where he's at now, but
yeah.
My thing is, I feel like they almost have to move. If Duncan leaves, they have to move on from this whole sharpshooting mold. Not that they don't have that type of player, but that can't be a big investment for the team. That like you have to have
that's fair.
The catch and shoot ability sprinkled through a bunch of different players, not just one guy. Because if you have, let's say hypothetically, you get Kyle Lowry, Colin Sexton, and then, I mean, if you want to put at the four, Kevin Love.
Let's say Kevin Love.
Oh, man.
That's three guys who mitigate whatever you lost with Duncan and add onto it offensively. Like, that is something that I think the Heat should look into because the offense was way too predictable last year, and it's not an indictment on Duncan. It's just the system that they were running was very, very predictable, and Duncan himself has a predictable skill set. So if they move on from him, which whatever they want to do, I'm fine with, I think they should look into getting players that can actually do things for themselves.
Duncan's value to the offense was what it was because he is a supremely elite shooter for sure. But also because his skill set was so important because like you'd mentioned, they didn't have that 3-level scorer and guys that can get to it off the bounce and move the defense in on their own. Jimmy is the closest thing that he had
ended
to
up
that.
Fucking them over because they got too reliant on it.
100%.
But star guys.
But my point is like they didn't really have a ton of other options. Like Goran wasn't getting downhill and making the defense collapse and moving the defense. Duncan is probably the only guy on the team this past season who moves defenses around, and so his value becomes it decreases when you add a 3-level scorer and some legit bucket getters.
And with Victor Oladipo coming in for over that 4-game span, the Heat did move up in terms of drives and they moved down in terms of handoffs for that time frame. So that's just 4 games. It's not 4 games.
The vision was there, y'all. The vision was there.
The vision was definitely there.
It barely happened. I mean, those last 2 where he was really starting to show those flashes, man, I was
that
Laker for the mid-level.
You know what it feels a lot like?
Who's giving Vic the mid-level here?
Wait, what?
Who's giving Vic Oladipo the mid-level here?
No.
I would like him back. I wouldn't mind him back, but just
I'd bring him back, and if you operate over the cap and retain his bird rights, like retain the cap hold, you can give him whatever it is you want, but I wouldn't give him that kind of money, and I would definitely use the mid-level on an impact player, a rotational impact player that I can count on.
So I have a couple questions.
If the mid-level exception is $10 million, would you pay him $10 million even if it's above the cap? So you're saying
1 year.
Got it.
Yeah, $1 year, $10 million prove-it deal. I would be in.
I take it back. If it's a 1-year type deal, I give him 10 mil. Sure.
Because you want to talk about players who can overperform on their contract. Let's say hypothetically Victor Oladipo comes back. Not healthy like Indiana version. He comes back and shows us what we saw in those last 2 games.
Literally.
That completely transforms the offense.
That's a mid-level player.
That's the player on the team that can overperform their contract, and it's at no risk to the Heat.
It's a good point. I wish Jimmy liked playing with him a little bit more.
So,
did I say that? Is my mic on? Whoops.
MLE Depot. Sure.
I mean, we saw more pick and roll like between Vic and Bam. I was like, wow, they could do this. Somebody driving to the rim, Bam rolling as a lob threat. Wow, it's been so long. How about this? Along the theme, like you guys mentioned, Sexton and Love is like a combo trade idea to help. What about let's say that again the Lowry thing happens and they somehow find a way to trade for Harrison Barnes and one more guy there, whether it's like, let's say Duncan walks and it's Buddy, but maybe Duncan doesn't walk. You get somebody else from there. What would you do? Like, are you guys in on something like that? Because I still like the Barnes idea a lot.
I think Barnes fits. You just need to get another big-bodied, like you need to get that 4-5 guy that's a little bigger bodied to play alongside Bam and use him as a chest piece, because Harrison Barnes is going to work if you downsize, but there's going to be situations in the Eastern Conference going against Embiid, going against the Bucks and whatever, where you might have to play a little bit bigger. And I think,
how do you guys feel about JaMychal Green there? Does he count? Does he
that's
count?
fine. He fits the mold for me. That works for me.
He can do it.
I
Okay.
love JaMychal Green, and I just want to say, Gad, like you make a really good point in that in certain scenarios, if you're projecting into the Eastern Conference playoffs next year, the Heat are going to have to upsize to match up with some of these teams. But again, man, we saw them get to the finals going small at the 4 and switching everything. I think that's
for sure. But the one team that they played was a self-destructive offense in the Milwaukee Bucks. That was the one big team that they beat.
Right. But that is, I mean, listen, Drew Holiday changes the equation for them for sure. But the fact that they're still assuming, you know, they don't replace Brook Lopez with somebody, they're still going to be dropping predominantly when he's in the game. And you're going to be able to take advantage of that with pull-up shooting and just quicker, faster guys. Like it makes Brook not unplayable, but it creates problems for them. I think my point was, though, that I think Eric Spoelstra prefers to play that way. I think them wanting to go bigger is a Pat Riley thing from what I gather from you guys' reports and all of that stuff.
It comes down to this. Riley's like, play however you want to play whoever you want to play. I don't want to get involved in that decision making. But next year, there's going to be a human being on the roster that if you have to get 10 rebounds tonight, you're going to be able to put him in the game and get 10 rebounds.
That sounds like Andre Drummond.
Beautiful.
Give me Boogie over Andre.
Like that's essentially what it is. Is like Riley wants to know in good conscience that there's a guy on the roster capable of getting double-digit boards, and that is on the roster, and be damned.
It's already there, man.
Yeah, I agree with that though, because you have to be versatile in your approach. You can't pigeonhole yourself into this one thing.
100%.
And if for some reason the one thing does not work, you have to be able to pivot. Even if it's not an upgrade of a pivot, you're probably putting worse talent on the floor, but you have to be able to adjust, because if you're able to do that, then you can make adjustments. Spo couldn't make any adjustments in this series against the Bucks because there literally was not personnel. I mean, he was playing Trevor Ariza on Giannis.
You're right.
He's going to lose that 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
And to that point, actually, I mean, we're seeing it with the Bucks this year in their run, right? Like if they need to play big, they put Brook Lopez in the game, they drop everything and they dominate the paint. If they need to get smaller and switch everything, they put PJ Tucker in for him, and they're able to be malleable in that sense. So you're right. I do agree. You do need to have versatility for sure.
That's what you need. Listen, the Hawks are going that way too. That's why they drafted Okongwu. They have Capella. They have Collins. They're going to play Okongwu. And he's even giving them good minutes. And he's just a rookie. Like, you get these kinds of guys that are defensive cheat codes like Bam, Giannis, soon to be Okongwu. They make a difference. But you also need someone that can help in that sense of rebounding when other teams are different in that approach. That's
what I'm saying. Like, they have to nail it. They have to nail it this summer, right? And
yes,
like I've been saying it this whole time. Like, why do we got to argue about whether or not they downsize or play big? Like, you can't just get like one of each and just try out different things when the matchups.
Imagine having options. What is that?
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Like, yeah, you want to bring on.
But Dedmon
like
showed that, like, he plugged some of that late in the season. Like, it was a breath of fresh air to see that guy come in and grab 11 rebounds on straight energy. Like, they need some of that.
There wasn't an attempt to get Dedmon into the game. I think he would have been able to make a difference, at least in that regard. Does he overcompensate in other areas and kind of lose a little bit of things, like some athleticism and whatnot, or
speed,
people moving? But
he's better than Drummond.
He is,
for sure.
And he could theoretically spot up, like, not every possession either, obviously.
Right.
But
we're talking about overplaying your contracts,
right? And the defense, the defense is fine with Dwayne Dedmon finishing possessions, shooting threes. I think the type of player that Gad is pointing to has to be a player that Spo is comfortable playing with Bam. Like, that is really the most important thing. It can't just be somebody who's coming in for 12 minutes a game to help you out in the paint. Like, it needs to be, if you need to pivot and change the way you play and upsize, it needs to be somebody that you can play for 25, 30, 35 minutes next to Bam.
Bam just has to hit corner threes, and then this is all solved, y'all.
Yeah.
Get a downsized 4 and then get somebody, and I know I keep saying his name, but he just, like, it fits perfectly. I don't know what else to say. It's JaMychal Green or Ibaka if his health can somehow get back to normal. Like, those two guys are right there, and I know both of those guys can play next to Bam, and I know Spo would be open to it because we saw him, give Dedmon a chance, and I know he didn't really give him a chance next to Bam much, but I just think if he has a big who shot that he can believe in as a spot up guy, I think that's a good move, man. Get a little bit of both. Switch up your style.
There. A guy that I've been on for quite a while, honestly.
Rudy?
Yes. You get.
I don't hate the Rudy idea.
You get Rudy Gay. You get JaMychal Green. Those are your front court investments because you don't need to spend too much. I think the front court is more replaceable than a lot of people think.
So, like, you split the mid-level, you're saying?
Something like that. Either split
I
the
love
mid-level, give one mid-level, give one biannual. I don't know how it would work. I'll let Andy figure that stuff out. I don't have enough time. But
Boogie, by the way, for Christian.
you get those guys, you spend on Lowry, and then you still have Hero, Precious, KZ, and whatever pick you want to unprotect to make another sizable upgrade in the guard department. And then you have a team that actually makes sense. You have that versatility. You have the ability to bring a solid 8 to 9 guys that can compete with anybody else's 8 to 9. Are they going to win? I don't know. But I will always say this. Get Jimmy Butler in a dogfight, and I'll take my chances. I'll see what happens. Obviously, it didn't work out this year. But just get those 8 to 9 guys that can fit different styles of play. You don't need to be this one-style team and try to live or die by whatever it is that you want to do. Have a versatile approach and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really great spot to end, y'all.
What?
Well, I mean,
think I've seen the worst question of the night. Would you take back Myers for the minimum?
No.
Never.
The minimum is overpaying him.
My mood. I got hyped speaking, and now I heard that name, and now
Most overpaid player at the minimum.
okay. So now we can't end there because it got sad.
Yeah, we could cut it off before.
So let's talk about the NBA playoffs because we are virtually like a week away from having the NBA finals set.
Yep.
Hypothetically, I think it's going to be the Suns and the Bucks, unless you guys see one of these teams making a comeback. I mean, the Clippers could. I don't really see it happening though. So
I was thinking.
I mean, do any of you guys see the Clippers or the Hawks pulling off comeback?
No.
Trey's health is the thing that swings it. If he can come back right away, but no. I think the Suns are getting there. But I don't know because you know what? Let me shut up, man. Let me shut up. I've seen what happens with Chris Paul before. As much as I love him, not that it's his fault, but it's happened. So let me shut up. The Western Conference Finals are still open. I'm not picking a team yet because
Phoenix, Milwaukee. I'll go on record as saying I think that's the finals, and I think Phoenix wins. I think that they are going to be more explosive, and that that Devin Booker, who's had a few tough shooting games in this Clipper series and stuff like that, that's going to change in a series against Milwaukee. I don't know. I like that matchup for Phoenix.
Me too. Two drop killers.
I've been on the Suns since the playoffs started. But as far as that series goes, I will play devil's advocate here and just get to, first of all, I mean, blowing that game at home in Game 5, you needed that one. Like that was probably your best opportunity to close out the series because now you've got to go on the road and win a game in LA where they're feeling good, man. Like that was a huge win for them. And I will add that I saw today on Twitter that Kawhi Leonard and Ivica Zubac are game time decisions for tomorrow. I don't know if that means anything, but they were listed as game time decisions last I saw.
Drug test them
so
immediately if they play.
He goes from sitting in like the stands, chilling with his family,
Going crazy.
Imagine? Could you
Going crazy. That was one of Mike. That was Mike Breen, right?
Yeah.
One of his best calls. That man is.
He's a GOAT.
He's elite. He
I really hope
is.
we see Kawhi play. Like that would be awesome. Like that
would be fantastic.
If the Clippers somehow do get through this series and he comes back in the finals and then they were to beat Giannis and Kawhi gets another ring, it would be a weird way for him to accomplish that. But man, like that's a huge thing if they get that far. Paul George shut a lot of people up last night.
I want the Suns to win. I don't hate that scenario. Like I don't have nothing against Kawhi and PG. The other guys on that team are stepping up. It's kind of cool, right? They're like Ty Lue. I forgot who said this. Somebody said Ty Lue is the anti-Doc, and I think it just keeps popping up in my head every time. And Paul George has been playing pretty well, but something tells me it's just going to be a little bit underwhelming. It's going to be Game 6 in LA, and the Clippers are going to do the Clippers thing. Paul George may not finish the game well. I mean, let's say he plays 3 quarters well, but the fourth quarter doesn't go well. All of the jokes are going to come back, and it's just the Clippers curse. But who knows?
I will say this in defense of Paul George, who I'm not a particularly big fan of. I don't think he's scored under 20 points in any of the games in these playoffs so far. So he's really showed up. But on paper, the Suns are the much better team, right? They have, considering the injuries, of course, they have no holes on the roster. They're tremendously balanced. They're malleable. They can play different styles. They can play fast. They can play slow. They can go inside. They have bucket getters at all three levels. I do see them going to the finals. I think the Bucks get there. Trae Young being out for Game 4, I think, is probably a death sentence. And I think that series is probably going to be over after tonight. And I think the Suns win the finals. I'm with Alex. I just think they have a little bit more. For whatever reason, they feel like the team of destiny to me.
So you
Aiden
all
is
three
really
have the
good,
Suns.
y'all. Damn, Aiden is good.
Aiden is one hell of a player.
Isn't
Yeah,
he shooting
man.
like 70%? Like it's like the highest percentage ever.
Yeah.
I think ESPN. I mean, we hardly ever want to credit them, but they said he could miss his next 20 shots and he still would have the highest field goal percentage in NBA history in the playoffs.
Wow, he passed
I think it's
Birdman.
That's ridiculous.
nuts. And his volume, that's huge.
Is the Bucks size going to mitigate Aiden at all? I'm not, trying to talk shit at all. I'm
Alex,
just
you
posing the
stole
question.
my points. I didn't get
Really?
to my finals pick yet.
No
I think
way.
the Bucks win the series.
I
think
think
the Bucks
they're not
win
going to know
finals.
what to do with Aiden. That's
I mean, I
gonna
think
be
it's
one of
fair.
the problems.
The Bucks should be able to win. Like, they should be the favorites in that series, even though I'm picking the Sun.
I think Aiden against Brook Lopez, Aiden probably gets those rebounds, but the problem is the Bucks as a team, when they rebound as a team, we saw it in round 1. They're just ruthless. Like Giannis is a hack on the rebounds, and you have Drew, who's a good rebounding guard, or at least good at boxing out. Chris Middleton,
They're big everywhere, and they're
he's
playing
been crashing
they're starting
boards.
PJ, right?
Yeah, like everybody is fundamentally sound when the ball hits the rim. And that's something that I think is will play a factor in that series against Phoenix. And I think after seeing what Pat Bev has been able to do with Devin Booker, not completely shut him down because Booker still had great games, but he's been able to turn him more into a volume scorer as opposed to an efficient guy.
That's the
And
blueprint.
I think Drew Holiday is better suited than anybody in the NBA to do that. So I think it's going to be one hell of a matchup. But
then what do you do with Chris Paul?
I mean, listen, Chris Paul is going to cook, honestly, regardless of who you put on him.
True.
If
He's
he's
gonna
going to
get the
take those shots that analytics hate. And if Chris Paul makes them, congratulations on your first championship, Chris Paul. But, I mean.
Quick counterpoint here, though. The Bucks give up a ton of threes, and the Suns have 3-point shooters at literally every spot on the floor.
This is true.
So
this is true.
That's one area where they can take
Oh man,
advantage.
Jay Crowder's on the
Jay
Suns,
Crowder's
man.
finals
MVP
MVP.
Jay.
Suns are winning the title. Jay Crowder's on the Suns.
Hey, you
It's
remember what
over.
he did to the Bucks last year?
It's over.
Keep that in mind.
It's true. It's true. I think it's going to be one hell of a series, honestly. Like, after all the things that have happened, it looks like we're going to get, fingers crossed, 2 healthy teams in the finals. And it's a matchup that, I mean, it's hard to predict. Like, the Suns, I guess, stylistically might have a bit of an advantage on the Bucks. It's tough to pick a Budenholzer coach team because he's probably going to tank at least 2 games in that series just by default. But I think the Bucks are going to be able to pull it out. I'm fine with either one, though. I don't care if the Bucks win or the Suns win. I'd like to see CP3 get one. I would like to see Giannis get one as well. So,
Yeah, I like a lot of those guys, even though I'm still petty and was rooting against them when they were playing Brooklyn. Just because I felt like I couldn't root for the team that just did that to my team. I felt like I just couldn't do it. I feel like I've gotten over a little bit now, but I just think this matchup is great. And, not to do the whole great for the league thing, bad for the league thing, because I don't necessarily like those conversations. But I do think it's good because it's kind of a different type of finals. It's 2 teams you don't see in the finals. Literally, you never see in the finals. But it's 2 teams you want to watch, though. It's not like – I think it would have been kind of ugly if it was like the Jazz, for example, right? We're like not a lot.
Jazz Hawks.
Yeah, like Jazz Hawks or even like Jazz Sixers. I don't know, man. That's terrible. But like with the Suns, you get Chris Paul and Devin Booker. I mean, Aiden's balling too, but those 2 guys by themselves, it's like it makes it worth watching. The Bucks, obviously, you've got Giannis, who's a damn freak and who's dominant and it's kind of the closest thing we have effectively to Shaq in the modern league. And just I think it's a really good matchup, and it's 2, kind of shut up the conversation about it's always kind of the same teams over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good, man. I think it's great for the league, and I want to see that matchup really bad.
I think – Errol, I thought you were going to make a point there.
I thought you were frozen. I was going to.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead. That's all you.
No, I mean, I was going to pull. I don't even know where I was going. I was going to have to come up with something because you were frozen, my guy. But I'm excited. Look, if that's a finals we get, I think it's probably, I want to say, look, before Anthony Davis, LeBron James, all that stuff happened in the first round, I had the Suns on here winning that series regardless.
Take your victory lap. You deserve it.
I genuinely believe that they are one of the more, even still, underrated teams in the NBA. Like, they, again, have no weaknesses. I just think down the stretch of games, because I think in a potential Bucks-Suns series, you get a bunch of close games, right? Because they're both very good teams. I think they're similarly matched in terms of how good they are. I just trust Chris Paul and Devin Booker down the stretch a little bit more than I do Giannis, Chris, and Drew. And that's where I think that's where I think the series is decided.
How about campaign for the mid-level?
Oh man, yes, I'm glad you brought him up. I like
The real
campaign.
CP?
Sneaking us in here. I'm up against the clock. I got a hard out here in 1 minute.
Campaign and Victor Oladipo is my backup backcourt.
I have no idea. I can't answer.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens. But we are wrapping up here. Alex, thank you. Greg, thank you. Ariel, thank you. Marco, I hope work is going great. Manny, the ones and twos in the background, thank you very much. We'll be back next week at some point, probably doing an actual X's and O's finals preview. But thank you in the comments, everybody. And y'all have a good night.
Stuff.
Play the video, Manny.
Thank you for listening to the Five on the Floor on the Fire Regional Sports Network.